Today's teardown is another 6.1 liter Hemi V8, and I know I've done another video on them, so I'm not trying to bore you guys, but when these engines come in, the parts just fly off the shelf as soon as they're torn down. So it's kind of a top priority to get these parts ready to go. This particular engine is from a manual transmission 2008 to 2010 Challenger, and the only reason I know that is it still has a pilot bearing in it. None of the other LX chassis vehicles came with a manual transmission, just the Challenger. And so because it's a manual and the Challenger didn't exist before 08 as the first year for the modern ones, I know what this is from. That is about the extent of what I know, besides the fact that it is locked up. When it came in, it was sitting on its tail on a pallet with transmission fluid coming out of the cylinders. It has no spark plugs in it, so I can't do any detective work in that area. But we're going to take this thing completely apart. Hopefully I get a good block out of it, and if I'm really lucky, the crank will be fine, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Today's teardown will not be done on an engine stand. I do not use stands on some of these engines. It's not worth it. They obscure the access to the back plate, and I have forklifts here, so moving them around is not really a strenuous or dangerous activity. I've never dropped one. I've done several hundred engines in the last couple of years, and these tables I've had whole cars on, so they're not gonna. It's not an engine's certainly not going to cause any damage. This engine is pretty well stripped. It's nice. I don't have a lot of stuff to take off. Unfortunately, the valve covers are both broken. I see this a lot on these 6.1 liters. They have aluminum valve covers, at least some of them do. And the bosses for the coils they're a little weak. And the places I get these engines from don't necessarily treat them that kindly because they are quote unquote bad engines. So I think I've gotten 1 or 2 good valve covers, and I've probably had 10 engines. So these, like the most of them, are going to end up in the scrap bin. We're going to get started on the driver's side. Well, everything looks all right to me. I don't see any damage, so let's keep going and get the valve train out of it. So there's some signs of moisture in there. There's a little bit of rust on the push rod, so we may have some rusty cylinder walls. Nothing's bent yet. Well, that one's junk now. I don't see any excess wear on the ends of the push rod, so that's a good sign. On to the passenger side. Again, I don't see any reason to suspect there's anything wrong with. All right, let's pull the drivetrain out. As you can see, there's some signs of transmission fluid on this side, so the other side didn't have that. So this actually could be the side with damage. We shall see. Stay. There's a little bit of moisture, some little bit of rust pitting. Wipes right off, but definite signs of moisture. Where it's not supposed to be. No excess wear on the ends of the push rod, so that all looks good. All right, let's go ahead and pull this head, and maybe we'll know exactly what's wrong with it as soon as it comes off. It's really easy to get these out compared to LS's. Let's see what we can do here. Oh, sweet. Getting leaked on. What's a core down without a huge mess on the floor, right? Yeah, might as well just rip this Band-Aid off. So the head actually looks pretty decent. I don't see any signs of issues. I mean, I won't really know until we run it through the parts washer, but there's no obvious signs of anything wrong. However, this has some pretty nasty rust on it, and most of these cylinders are filled with transmission fluid, which is what came running out of this thing when it was sitting on its tail. Hopefully it's just rust, because that'll clean up. I mean, it'll need work, it'll need machine work, but it'll clean up. It's not like something exploded. But why is it rusty? How did it get water in it? And did it do any more damage? Let's pull the other head off and see if we see the same thing. Is this one gonna leak on me? Nope, it's just not gonna come off. Okay. This head, much like the other, looks about average. It is rather carbony on this. I don't really, maybe it wasn't driven that hard. It's really hard to tell what would cause that. Crankcase ventilation issue maybe. Something I noticed flipping these heads around and putting the valve train back in it, the tops of the valves are really rusty, and probably 5 or 6 different cylinders. And this doesn't happen overnight. This isn't like some flash rust or anything. This is sitting water for some duration of time. What likely happened is the engine has another problem, which we will uncover. And they let the engine sit outside in the rain or under a tarp, or maybe they used it as a boat anchor. I'm not sure. Probably not the latter. But this just drives me crazy. So I get these expensive engines in, and these people just let them sit outside. And it could be that the place I got the engine from, maybe they tried to turn it over. Who knows? Much like the other side, there's a little bit of ATF in here, like someone tried the old ATF trick to get them unstuck, but to no avail. But some of these boards look pretty nice. Just a couple have some rust pitting. So let's pull the lifters out and see if we see any lifter damage. A little bit of debris there. Nothing terrible yet. I also like these because you can grab them, unlike an LS where you usually gotta. That one's got a little bit of wear. Hopefully the cam doesn't match. I'm sure it does. It's just how it goes. A little bit there too. Nothing terrible yet. Well, let's just consider that one junk. That looks all right. Yeah, I don't see nothing terrible yet. Come on, get out of your home. That looks all right. Let's go to the other side. Nothing wrong yet. I say yet just because that's my luck. Only takes one to take out a cam, so if we get a good cam out of this, I'll be pretty happy. That one's got some wear. Not awful though. Sure, we'll see that on the cam itself. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it on its tail using a forklift, and we're going to go ahead and take the pan off and check the rod cap, see if we find any damage there. Well, that wasn't stuck at all. Holy transmission fluid. This isn't a 4L60. What are we doing here? So this is not what I'm used to seeing in pans, but I suppose if you're pouring a bunch of it down the cylinders trying to get one of these running or unstuck, that will be what you find. The good news is there's not a lot of debris in here. There's a little bit, but there's really nothing terrible. I don't see any exit wounds on the windage tray. So we're going to go ahead and get that gasket and pickup out of the way and the windage tray out of the way and start pulling some rods and pistons out, and maybe we'll find why she's locked up. This all looks pretty nice in here actually. It's really clean. We're going to pull some caps, check out some rod bearings, and see what we can see. So we're going to start off with what's easy to get since we know this engine doesn't spin over. Granted, I haven't tried it since I pulled the heads and valve train, but it actually looks pretty decent. It's really nice for one of these. I gotta figure out where that bearing, there she is. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. Let's see if we can get that piston out of there. Sometimes with the rust in those cylinders, it can get kind of challenging to get these rods and pistons out. That actually looks really nice. Another one that looks good. Question is, can I get this out? Yeah, I'll be able to get her out. No damage there either. With 3 of the rods out of it, I don't suspect this is going to be all of a sudden easy to turn over, but we're going to try anyway. Nope. It's still just as stuck as it was before. Yeah, that bearing looks good too. So now that I've got all the rod caps that I have access to out of the way, I mean, I guess I could get wrenches and stuff in here, but I don't really see any reason to suspect that the engine can't turn over because of a spun rod bearing. There's still 2 right here. I suppose that could be a problem, but we're going to go ahead and loosen the main since they're going to have to come off anyway. Crank's coming out, and maybe that'll free it up. If not, we'll pull the timing cover. Maybe something is magically stopping the engine from rotating, but I think we're going to have our work cut out for us. We may have a piston that's stuck in the bore from rust. We'll see. So even though I've got half of the engine's pistons and rods out of it, and all of the main caps loose, it still doesn't even turn a little. It's locked solid. And at this point, I'm pretty certain it's a piston and a rings rusted into a bore. I think doing what I've done so far would kind of eliminate any possible crank issues. But this also makes it very difficult to go forward. So my only play at this point is to try to get as many of the rod caps loose, and maybe one of those caps is the one that frees the crank up. So let's go ahead and fight all the different size sockets I'm going to need and wrenches, and yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really not looking forward to this. Well, I've solved the mystery as to why it won't turn over. However, that doesn't make it any easier to get apart. Let me show you what I found. So don't call me an expert, but I think that's bent. Now the real trick is, how the hell am I getting it out of there? So this is neat. Watch the rod cap as I take this bolt out. So I want you to watch the gap here between the fractured rod sides from the cap, the rod, when I go to loosen this up. This is under so much force. That gap is opening up. All right, so I've got that one bolt loose, backed off about 1/2 inch. And let's see if it's, oh, would you look at that? I am so lucky. Now I can get the rest of these out. I don't have to sit there. I had some crazy plan with short sockets or cutting sockets in half to get to the rod cap bolts and loosening everything, but I think I'll be just fine now. So I've got the rods and pistons out now that I loosened that one rod cap and was able to turn the crank. You can see which one is bent. This one here is really bent. But I did notice something else. We'll get back to the bent rod here. So this bearing, this is the front cylinder opposite side from the bent rod. The bearing is pretty rough. It's scored pretty good. We're going to go check the crank in a minute for damage. But let's get to that bent rod. Whew, that thing's wrecked. It's wrecked so hard that the crank came up and hit that piston so hard it broke the bottom of the piston right next to the wrist pin. It's actually cracked. It's going to be a good front desk ornament. There's a good way of looking at the crack. That's a pretty cool piece for the front office. I got a whole bunch of different broken stuff up there from all the stuff I've torn down. It's a little concerning that there's also some bearing damage. I hope there's no cam damage, but let's go look at the crank and see if that's got any damage. So I don't see any damage on the counterweights from making contact with the piston, so that's good. There is a little bit of scoring on that journal. It's not terrible, but I can't feel it with my fingernail, so it's a very usable crank. I'm quite happy with this. Well, that was pretty fun, but we are not done here. I still have to pull the cam out of it, the crank out of it, and inspect all of those parts separate, as well as the block. So we're going to go ahead and get the block tilted back down onto the table. We're going to pull the crank pulley, the timing cover, and the cam out of it and inspect that next. All right, let's give it a little tap. Not going to say it. I'm learning. Even the stock cams sell from these, so if it's a good cam, it's money. But I've gotten a lot of bad cams out of these. Can't really do anything. It's not really a good way of supporting these, unfortunately. Yeah, it looks like a factory cam to me. Is it good though? Yeah, it actually looks pretty decent. So I got everything apart, and the block actually looks really nice. I can't find any cracks. There's some rust staining. That's going to need some cleanup, but nothing crazy. Probably a ball hone, honestly. That would probably be enough for this. And all the other cylinders, while there's some signs of that moisture. This thing obviously sucked in water, and then it sat with water in it. But it's a little groove in there. See if we can feel that with our finger. No, I can't feel any. There's no marks that I can feel with my hands. And the other side here, it looks just as good, if not a little bit better. This is all pretty good. This is probably best case scenario, if I'm going to be honest. A little machine work, but most of these parts are completely usable, which is awesome. Just awesome. I just can't get over how sweet that rod is. It's going to be a great desk ornament with some of the other stuff. Maybe I'll show you guys some of the other stuff in another video. I've been doing this for a while and just recently making videos of it. So that was pretty much best case scenario. I got almost everything out of that engine that I can resell. The block's good, the crank's good, the pan's good, the heads look good, the front timing cover's good. So I consider that a really good win. One bent rod and piston, well, those are probably the cheapest parts I sell out of these. Another thing to note, doesn't matter how much ATF you put down a cylinder if the rod is bent so bad that the counterweight smashed the bottom of the piston. You're not going to get that to turn over. So whoever put a couple quarts of ATF into this thing, that was a very futile effort. As far as new stuff coming along the pipeline, I'm working on getting some Coyote engines. I know people have asked why you don't do Ford engines. Oh, it must be because they don't blow up. Well, all engines blow up. I'm not really partial to anything. This is just the market I know, and the Ford stuff I haven't really gotten into yet. I did make some phone calls, and hopefully I got some stuff coming, so stay tuned for that. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you'd like to buy any parts from this engine or any of the LS engines, I'm going to put a link, my email in the top of that. Feel free to shoot us an email. If we don't have it, we'll just tell you right off the bat that's something we don't get, but we have lots of LS stuff in stock, and I'm sure the parts for this will sell really fast, so if you catch this video really early, you might get lucky and be the new owner. Talk to you guys next time.